Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to Jamie Photography. In today's video, we're going to take this shot of the Houses of Parliament, Westminster Bridge, and Queen Elizabeth Tower, what we call Big Ben, and we're going to turn some rather challenging raw images that we shot. Here they are, one 2 stops brighter than the other. And bring them into this sort of collage of color. Have some fun doing it. Now, what I'm really going to try and talk about today is how to deal with very high contrast, where you've got very bright areas and very dark areas, well beyond the dynamic range of your camera sensor, and how we can bring that together using the HDR process, but also focusing on the areas of brightness and darkness to make sure that we have actually captured the data. And as you can see, this shot here is 2 stops brighter than this stop here, but this allows us to maintain the detail on the clock face. So we're going to work together to get to this point. So if you want to follow along, those 2 raw files are in the comments. The link is in the comments. Feel free to download and join me with this, follow along and do what I'm doing. I haven't put a sky in there. I just grabbed any sky, but you're welcome to find a sky of your own. If you can't find a sky, just have a look on Google and do an image search, and just make sure that you ask for a 20 megapixel image or greater when you do so. And then we'll go through a sky replacement as well, and we will do that. So looking forward to getting into this one. If you like what I'm doing on YouTube and you haven't already subscribed, it would be great for you to join me on this adventure and subscribe. If you like this video and you like my approach, then feel free to click like. It always helps me with YouTube, the more likes I get, and I really do like comments and questions. I try to answer every one of them, so feel free to have a chat with me in the comments or questions. Okay, let's get started. So I shot this particular shot of the Houses of Parliament and Queen Elizabeth Tower, which we kindly referred to as Big Ben because that's the name of the bell that's inside the tower, and Westminster Bridge, and wanted to try to capture a sort of nice night scene during my recent workshop that I ran, which we had great fun on, I must admit. But one of the big challenges with shooting at night is contrast, and trying to make sure that we have all the data we need to be able to process the image once we get home. And one of the main areas here is the highlights. You can see the face of Big Ben, you can see the lights on the bridge, and you can also see the lights on the Houses of Parliament here. And they are extremely bright. And if I bring down the highlight slider all the way to the bottom, let's just zoom in on the clock face here. You can see that we don't have all the data there. In fact, if I go to the white slider and hold down the Option or Alt key on Windows and move that up to where we just start to see the light appear, there we go, right? You can see that there is no data there. So this image was beyond the realms of the capabilities of the sensor within the camera. So what I needed to do was I needed to shoot a darker shot. So this was 5 seconds at f8 ISO 100. So if I open up those exposure a little bit there, you can see we've got a little bit of noise, and we'll deal with that in a second. So what I did was I shot a second shot. Here we go. So this is 1.3 seconds. Okay, so it's approximately 2 stops less light on Big Ben here. And if I bring down the highlights, you can see we now have the data. Okay, so I can bring that all the way down and see that we can actually play with the data there. And so roughly around about there is where we need to be with the clock face. The problem is that this shot, if I move out, is now extremely dark, and if I open up the shadows, it hardly makes any difference. And if I then take the shadow slider and bring the shadows up to where I want it to be, we're going to be at something like 3.5 stops, which means with the highlights down and the exposure up, the 100 ISO that we shot at is going to be more like 800 to 1000 ISO. And if we look at the sky, you'll see the noise is there. So we really want to use the best of each of these two images. So we want the brightness from this darker image, and we want the lighter areas from the other shot to be sort of brought together. So we're going to do an HDR, but before we do that, we do need to do our noise correction. So I'm just going to bring down the highlights here to where I can see that I've got usable data here on this one. I've opened up the shadows. I'm just going to bring down the exposure so it's not too high. I'm just going to be 2 stops over on this particular shot, which is the 259 image. The other one here, the 258, we know we've not got the data here. So what we're going to need to do is bring this down, the brightness down to probably around about 1 stop over. And then we've got good usable data here. So let's select both of these. One of them's already selected, as you can see. I'm going to hold down the shift key and select the other one. So we have both of them now selected. I'm going to go down to the detail module here on the right hand side, and I'm going to select denoise. Okay, so with both images selected, we can run the denoise function, but in this case I'm not going to create stacks. I want to keep the images separately, and so that we will end up with 4 images, 2 originals and 2 enhanced. So I'm going to click enhance. I'm going to let it do its work to correct the noise in these two images. And quite interestingly, when you look at the image, you've got a great shot of Jupiter in the scene here, which is very nice to see nice clear skies over London. But what we will be doing once we've got this image where we need it to be is we're going to be doing a sky replacement, because a boring blue sky never looks very good at all. And we're also going to remove the crane and some of the building works here so that we can see where we are. So there's the denoise is done. So we now have 4 images. We have an enhanced version of 258, and we have an enhanced version of 259. So we're going to select the 2 images that are enhanced, 70 and 72. Just going to zoom in and make sure it's rendered. There we go. And same with that one, they're both rendered. So we've got 70 and 72 here, so that is 258 and 259 enhanced. I'm going to right click on them now, they're both highlighted. I'm going to go to photo merge, and I'm going to go to HDR, and what we're going to do is we're going to bring those 2 images together. So inside the HDR module, you have a number of options here. You have auto align, which you should always have ticked between them, because there might be an ever so slight deviation between the 2. Auto settings doesn't really matter. We can correct those settings later and change them to what we want. And we also want to look at the deghost as well. So if we select low on the deghost, this hopefully will deal with some of these light trails that we have on the bridge, because these were quite long exposures. So and it'll also help smooth out the water a little bit. So I think we'll go with let's just try medium, see where it gets us. You can see that there is more of the lines up there on the bridge, the light trails. So high will obviously, let's just click on the show the deghost overlay, so you can see where it's trying to keep things from not being blended together. If we go back to the low, you'll see that there's only small areas that it's dealing with. In fact, in this case, I'm probably just going to go with none and let it blend it together, see where it takes us. And we can turn on create stack, because we'll put these 2 enhanced images behind the HDR. So when we're ready, we'll click merge, and up in the top left corner you'll see the progress that it makes in bringing these 2 images together. So once that's done, we'll end up with a single HDR image, and here we go. Here it's the enhanced HDR, and it's got, you can tell by all of the little boxes at the bottom what effectively has been done in terms of adjustments, enhancements, and also HDR. So this is the one we want to work with. So we now should have all of the data that we required. We should have the highlights and the lowlights, and it should all be brought together. So let's just have a look at that. Go to the basics here, and we're going to bring down the highlights all the way to the bottom, bring up the shadows all the way to the top. I'm going to bring up the exposure. Let's come up to about 2.5 stops there, and let's have a look at the face of Big Ben, and that works very, very well. We'll be able to even correct that further later on. And look at the sky, no noise at all, absolutely no noise. And we have pushed this with the shadows fully open. That's at least 2 to 3 stops, and also the exposure raised up by 2.5 stops. We're pushing about 4, maybe 5 stops over the original images that we had. And if I just take you back to one of the DNGs and bring the brightness up to the same level that we've just been looking at. So this is the after and this is the before. You can see where we were pushing 4 to 5 stops, pushing us up well past 1250 ISO, probably even 1600 ISO. We've taken those images using the denoise function and using HDR, and we have absolutely no noise at all. In fact, there is less noise here than if it was at ISO 100 itself. So an extremely useful tool, the denoise function in Lightroom. So I'm happy we've got all the data we need. We've got ourselves an image that we can now work with. We need to remove this crane, and we need to think about a sky replacement. So I'm going to send this over to Photoshop. So I'm going to right click on the image, and I'm going to select Adobe Photoshop Beta. This is the new version. Hopefully you're all working with it now, because it has the generative fill function available in it, which is an extremely useful function, and we're going to use that again today because it's extremely helpful thing to use. So we're in Photoshop here. Beta, there we go, it's opened up in there, and we're going to use it to do a sky replacement. But before we do that, we do need to just deal with the crane, and we do need to deal with this building over here. And there's a little crane behind Westminster Abbey there, behind the Houses of Parliament. So to zoom in, I'm going to hold down the Alt key on a Windows, Option on a Mac, and I'm just going to wheel my mouse to zoom in a little bit. There we go. I'm going to select to remove the crane because we have a smooth background. I'm going to select the remove tool, which is J. Now, if you go into J, this is normally the spot healing brush tool, but because we have the remove tool now available, it's in the same option. So I'm just going to select that. I'm going to select a slightly bigger brush by using the square keys to the left of the return key, and then I'm just going to draw this remove tool just over the bits that I want to remove. So I'm just going to move the crane there, and that's very good. Coming up here, take that wire out, and then when you're done, let go of the key, the mouse key, and it will do its work. Let's see how well it does. It does extremely well. I'm not too worried about these 2 stars in the sky. We can always just use the remove tool to remove those, but we're going to do a sky replacement anyway. Now we've got this building to remove. Now it's a little bit more complicated, and because we've got these sort of drag lines and things, I think remove tool may struggle. However, let's try. You don't know until you try. So I'm just going to come in here, and I'm just going to run along the top of the bridge there. That's it, and then across the top there, and then just make sure you fill it in completely, and then let go, and let's see what remove tool can do. If this doesn't work very well, we will use the generative tool. It's got this along the bridge there. Don't like that, so I'm just going to undo that. Command Z or Control Z on a Windows, and then I'm going to go up to the lasso tool. Inside the lasso tool, you'll find the polygonal lasso tool, which means we can draw straight lines when we're making a selection. So I'm going to start down here on the edge of this bridge, and I'm going to draw a straight line along the edge of the bridge here to this point, and then I'm just going to go up and over, trying to keep a relatively close, but still leaving a little bit of gap so that the computer can figure out what we were actually trying to remove. I'm going to come down to there and come back down there. So and there's our selection. So now I'm going to click generative fill. Now if you don't see this little contextual box, as it's called, just go into the Windows option up the top here, and you'll find there's a tick box to turn the contextual taskbar on. All right. So, and once you've clicked generative fill, I'm just going to click generate. I'm not going to write nothing. I'm going to write nothing in the box because I don't want it to do anything other than try to remove the object that we've got here. Now remember, this generative fill works to a maximum resolution of 1024 pixels by 1024 pixels. So don't try to do whole image changes. I've seen people online joining images together and doing quarter of the screen add-ins and fills. Now if you're just using your image for social media and people will only be looking at their phone, then that's fine, it doesn't matter. But if you're working with a high resolution image, and as in this case it's 61 megapixels when I used to have my Sony A7R4, then you do have a lot of pixels to deal with, and if you do too big of an area with generative fill, you will end up with palated pixels, i.e. it will be blurred. Now that's the first option it's give us. I quite like that. What's number 2? No, not so good. Number 3, not so good. So quite like number 1. I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to say, hey, thanks very much, Adobe, because that's really good. But I want to get rid of the rest of these lines here, so I'm just going to continue to take another straight line all the way down to this light here. I'm going to just come up around this blur that we've got and just return back there. So we've got that area there. Click generative fill, click generate, and let it work on this. Now hopefully it will keep the light flares in place because they look really nice. You get those, you're probably aware, but you get those when you tend to shoot at higher f-stops because you get diffraction from the iris within the camera lens itself. So this was shot at f11, I believe, or even f8 it may be. But as long as you're sort of f8 and above, you will get these diffractions. They do look very good. So option 1 looks good. Option 2 and option 3. So it's between option 3 and option 1. Option 3 is best. Hey, thanks Adobe. Just give them that feedback. It's always worth doing. So we've got rid of the crane. I think we just need to get rid of the blurred person. We've got the person taking the picture of the person, but let's just go back into the remove tool. We will go back onto the base layer. We will take a smaller brush by using the square brackets just to the left of the return key, and I will just paint that out, and bosh, they disappear. It's magic, isn't it? So I'm just holding down the space bar and using the mouse to move around. There's a little red thing there which is a little bit distracting. I'm just going to take that out. And we're just going to go around and have a look over here. So the crane, there is a crane there behind Westminster Abbey. So I'm just going to zoom in even more, holding down the Option or Alt key, and I'm going to use the remove tool here just to come down and see if we can remove that without doing too much harm to Westminster Abbey. That would be a sin, wouldn't it? And I'm just going to make my brush smaller here. Now there is an awful lot of scaffolding on the roof here. I'm not going to try and tackle all of that. It is very small at the end of the day. However, this bit at the top does sort of show itself a little bit. So I just want to take this out here, even though it is very tiny. It will just tidy things up. And there is a gantry that's been put between these two towers. So I think I'm also going to try to remove that as well. So just sort of running along there and just taking out what you need to take out. You don't need to take out huge areas. And I'm just going to fill this in. Should have gone for a slightly bigger brush, but that's okay. I enjoy this. So there we go. That's got rid of that. So I think just zooming out, holding down the Option or Alt key. Just going to zoom out, look across. Pretty happy with that. I think all the things that we don't want in the shot have been removed. So yep, happy with that. I'm just going to zoom all the way out and put it back in the center. So we're just going to do a sky replacement now. So I'm going to bring all these layers together first. So layer 0, hold down the shift key, click on the top layer, right click, and then merge the layers. And then we're going to go to edit, sky replacement, and we're going to get the sky replacement module. Now I want a good sunset sky. And the one that's already in there, let's just have a look at some of the selections we have available to us. Photoshop does come with a number of skies already in it. I have my own skies. I do take a lot of my own skies separately. And you can get to your own skies by clicking this little plus button down here, and that will take you into your own folder structure, and then you can find where your skies are. So, but this sky, I believe I purchased from a collection from Serge Ramelli, and I also purchased some from Clever Photographer. But I am working on my own, because the ones that generally that I see that you can purchase online are relatively low resolution JPEGs, and they don't give you a huge amount of dynamic range. One of the things I'm working on is to create a large portfolio of skies, libraries of skies, that will be available in JPEGs, but also I'm going to make them available in PNG and DNG format, so you will be able to purchase them and download them, and have high resolution and high dynamic range skies, which I think gives us a lot more to work with. So keep looking at this space. Hopefully in the autumn, in the fall, I will have those packs available at a reasonable price for people to purchase. So just keep an eye out. But it's a lot of work to get the best of the skies we can, and you don't always have the best skies around you. So it's going to be a little while till I've got them all sorted. So anyway, it's put the sky in for us. It's done a pretty good job, as it always does. I'm going to stick with this sky. It looks good enough to me. I'm just going to click away from this module. I don't click OK at this stage. I just click in this little grey box to get rid of it. And what we want to do is just look at the edge, and how it's sort of defining within this scene. So the shift edge, if you move all the way to the left or all the way to the right, you can see the effect it has. If you go too far to the right, you can see it burns through the buildings. So we just need to make sure that we're not doing that. So the face of Big Ben will be affected because it's very bright, and maybe the towers over here will also be affected. And if I just zoom in there, you can see they're just affecting them. And if I just go a little bit more to the right, we can try to avoid any blurring in there. See, again, if I go to the right, you see that it burns through. So if I go to the left, we want to try to avoid that. If you go too far to the left, you end up with a little bit of blooming around the edges, and the sky can look a little bit unnatural. So I'm just gonna keep it probably around about 55, something like that. And then the fade edge, well, this deals with the edge again, but from rather than from sky to object, it does object to sky. So we go all the way to the left. You can see make sky really bright, but you do get this edging effect. So we want to try to find a balance between the two. If I go all the way to the right and all the way to the left, so I'm thinking we want to go somewhere in the middle, around about there. So I'm just going to zoom out again, make sure that we're not blurring over. I want to make the sky perhaps a little bit brighter. Nope, maybe a little bit darker. Yeah. And going to give it a little bit more temperature. Just go to the right slightly there. Then you end up, you have a flip tick mark. You can move it from left to right. That works quite well. And then you have this lighting mode. Well, this deals with how the two layers interact with each other. You can see here, I go to screen and you get the halo effect. So I'm going to go to multiply, and we're going to stick with that. And then you have the three sort of foreground controllers. If you go to the left and then go to the right and foreground, you can see that it's dealing with the object, not the sky. So we want to keep the object relatively bright. So I'm going to the left. Edge lighting also deals with the interaction between the object and the sky. So if you go all the way to the right, it's relatively dark, little halo there. If you go all the way to the left, you'll see that it's slightly better. So I think this one has got to go somewhere in the middle. And then color adjustment just deals with the color of the sky being rendered into the scene. If I go all the way to the right, the color of the sky will be rendered into the scene. I don't want to go too far, so I'm going to put that somewhere in the middle. Now, there is a little bit of an edge here, so I do want to refine that. So I can use the refine tool here, and we just want to look at this edge, but we have to be careful because this brush is quite powerful. So I'm going to go quite big, and I'm going to stay out here, and I'm just going to wash down and around as I work around there, just so you've got the brightness of the sky. Same here. I'm just going to start up here, come down into this gap, keeping the center of this brush from not crossing over onto the buildings, and just work our way around, keeping my finger on there just to brighten up the sky. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit, just use the Alt key there just to move out a little bit. So again, using relatively large brush, just going to sweep away, and what it will do is it will just brighten up the sky in the areas that we want to, and ensure that we've got a good edge. That's the idea of the refine tool. So just gonna go around there, along there. We're going to just come in a bit closer, I think. There we go. So just along there, just want to bring that light in, so you can see that it works. It works very, very well to just brighten up the sky back to where we were, whilst maintaining these sort of edges here. So again, just don't want it coming over onto the buildings. This is the important point. So you don't cross over onto the buildings. You can do the opposite. You can hold down the Alt or Option key, and it creates a minus, and then I can always do a minus if I want to, but I'm not going to do that in this case. If you found that you had some blur over, maybe I have some on the actual clock face itself, so I'm just going to hold down the Option Alt key to get a minus, and I can just click that a couple of times just to make sure that we've got nothing there. Now, what you do find is where you've got very bright lights and you put a sky replacement in, the lights can be affected by the sky. So I take a smaller brush, hold down the Option Alt key to give me that minus, and I can just undo, just by clicking on there, just undo the sky out of the light fittings themselves. You can see there, so you get the whiteness, of them back. So when you're holding down the Option or Alt key, you're getting a minus effect with the refine tool, and that does work really well. Now there is a little bit of a plume around these lights here. I'm just going to see if I can actually just correct that a little bit more. Will it work? It does leave a line around there. Just going to undo that, take a bigger brush, and just try to wash it in a little bit more, and that works quite well. So just pick up that bit there. I want a little bit more on here. That works very well, and you can find what's best for you in terms of the colors. It's a beautiful sunset, this one. This will make a lovely picture. Okay, so let's zoom out. I'm happy with that. I think we might want to put a sun in there or something, so we will have a look at that when we get back into Lightroom. So I'm just doing a couple of last little brightening bits here and there. That's good. Right, once we're done, we're happy with that, we can click OK, and it will render that for us. We don't need the two layers here, so the new layer is the copy. That's the one we produced. If I turn that off, you'll see that we don't have a sky. If I turn it on, we do. So the bottom one is the one we don't need anymore, and I tend to delete the ones I don't want, so I'm going to delete the layer. And the reason is, yes, delete the layer, is that I don't want to make the file overly big when it comes back into Lightroom. Just bring back the data you need. So happy with that. So let's go to File, Close, because we don't want it in Photoshop anymore. But click Save, and what that will do is that will put it back into Lightroom. And there we go. We're back into Lightroom now, and we can finish off this image. I'm just zooming in to see the clock face. Looks very good. Happy with that. So let's just finish this image off now. So what can we do? Well, we need to do a bit of dodge and burning on the sky, make that really stand out. I'd like to put a sun in somewhere around here, and we can put some sun flares and things in, and reflections in the water to do that. But we do need to make this a bit brighter over this side, and I'm just going to deal with the sky for a second. So I'm going to go to Masks, select Sky, and it will select the sky for me. And there we go. It's also selecting the clock face. So I'm going to intersect this sky with, so I go to the little three dots in the mask, three dots there, and I want to intersect with a linear gradient, and I want to bring a linear gradient in from the top right as such. And what I want to do is just darken the image slightly up there. You can see I can darken that a little bit. And what I can do is I can add in some blue just to bring it up. It's quite purpley, so I can back off the magenta a little bit as well, just to give us a little bit less of that purple in the sky. So a little bit more blue. That looks okay. Yeah, happy with that. So this is the blue on this side with the green at the bottom, and I want to try to add more color on this side. So what I'm going to do is create another mask, select the sky again intersect it with a linear gradient, and bring in a linear gradient from this side this time. And this time I want to make sure that we've got a little bit more orange on that side. So we're getting this flow from blue across to orange, which really does draw your eye into the image. I'm also going to perhaps just bring up the highlights a little bit, and I'm definitely going to add some clarity to that sky. Oh yeah, that looks good. You know what? I think I'd like to do some on this side as well. So I'm going to go back to the other one. I'm just going to click on the other mask here. There we go. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to bring some clarity into this side. I want more blue up here. I really do. So sorry, that was the whole screen. Let's just go back up to this one here just to deal with the just going to bring that blue in even more and try and remove more of that purple. Yeah. There we go. So we've got this sort of bluey side here. The only thing is we need to be careful that it's not going to take these lights. So really what we should do now is inside that mask, we should subtract, because we don't want to do it to this area here, object. I'm going to take a smaller brush here, and I'm just going to highlight that as an object, and it's been subtracted. You can see that's been subtracted. I want to do the same with that one as well. So we're going to subtract another object, and just take that one out as well. So that's also not being lit by the changes in the sky. And I think just to be on the safe side, I'm going to do the same to Big Ben. So inside the mask there, mask 1, cancel, inside mask 1, subtract object, and then we're just going to paint in Big Ben. There we go. And it will subtract that away. So that's looking pretty good. Okay, sky's looking awesome. Like that a lot. Just need to boost the reflections in the water over this side. So we're going to go to create a radial gradient, and we're going to firstly boost the Houses of Parliament here. So I'm just going to put that up there. It will get the reflection here, and whatever we do is going to do to the sky. So we want to subtract the sky from this shot, so it's only the buildings. And then what we're going to do is we're going to bring up the exposure and bring down the highlights for the building there. So we keep that, and maybe not quite as orange, maybe back the orange off just a little bit. Open up the shadows, and we get quite a strong color there, and the water reflections much brighter. In fact, I might even bring it up even higher still. So and let's just add a little bit of contrast to that as well. Yeah, very nice. So we've got a nice bright reflection there. I think the water itself needs to be brighter still, so we're just going to create another mask, another radial gradient, and I'm going to pop it in the water here, literally coming across there, not too far into this area because it's already quite bright. And I'm going to bring up the exposure even more, so we've got that brightness coming through there. That looks very good. Now I want to increase the clarity on the bridge here, so I'm going to create another mask. This time it's a brush. I'm going to take quite a large brush here, and I'm just going to paint that all in with this brush like so. And then I'm going to go to clarity, and I'm just going to boost the clarity. You can see no clarity, lots of clarity, so just boost the clarity a little bit on that bridge so it makes it stand out a little bit. Yeah, excellent. So I think we just need to drop the clock face down, so I'm just going to create another mask, another radial gradient. This time we're going to pop one on the clock face itself, like so. Let's zoom in and just be nice and close so we can see what we're doing. And I'm just going to make it roughly the same size as the clock face. There we go. And this, but I'm going to take the little red dot, not the black dot, the little red dot, and I'm just going to draw that out to almost the edges, and that is your feather. So I want the effect to be consistent from the center right out to that edge and then fade off in the last edge. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to bring down the highlights for Big Ben's face there just a little bit, add in some contrast. That's working okay. Might just go down to clarity, see if we can bring a little bit more clarity into that clock face. Yeah, that's a bit too much, but there we go. And a little bit of textures, just so it's nice and clear. So it's 5 to 10. We actually stood there and listened to it chime 10 o'clock. It was beautiful. And I think we're pretty well done with that. Let's just zoom back out. So I'm happy with this image. I think it needs to be a little bit darker at the top. So let's just put in a linear gradient, open a mask and just put in a linear gradient coming down from the top. And what we'll do is we'll just darken that down a little bit more at the top there. Yeah, that's very nice. I'm going to create a brush, and a relatively small brush, but this time it's going to have a lot of feather and about 40% flow. And I'm just going to put in contrast, and I'm going to put in clarity, and I'm just going to paint these skies in just a little bit more, because it looks awesome, this sky. So I'm also going to add another brush, but this time I'm going to turn on the auto mask function, leave the feather at 100, the flow at 40. I'm going to add some highlights and a little bit of exposure as well as some contrast, and I'm just going to add in some clarity, more clarity, and now I'm just going to run along the bright edges, and the auto mask will keep it to the brighter areas as we come through, so we can create almost a dodge and burn on these brighter clouds, which looks really good. And I'm just going to bring that up over here as well, just boost these a little bit. Let's add in a little bit more saturation as well. Great. So yeah, I think we're pretty well there. Let's add a sun. Let's do that. So I'm going to use Luminar for this. I can do it just with radial gradients, but Luminar has a really good function. So edit in Luminar 4. Doesn't really matter what version of Luminar you use. They're all good. You don't really need to buy the latest and greatest. I'm just going to click to include adjustments, because the later ones are more of the one-click wonders, I call them. They try to give you an option to deal with many things in one go, which is fine, and they work very well. But okay, we're inside Luminar 4. So what I like to do is I'm not going to do much in the way of adjustments here, other than add a sun and then maybe a little bit of mystic glow. So I'm going to go down to the creative option here, and in there you will find sun rays. Okay, so if you click on sun rays, you can place a sun, and when you click place a sun, a little sun dot will appear. Here it is, and I'm going to put it down here between this gap between Big Ben and the other buildings. And then you can bring up the amount slider here. So I'm just going to bring that amount up, and what will happen is you'll start to see an area of sun rays. Now it doesn't look very authentic at the moment, but what we're going to do is we're going to brighten up that area just a little bit more. So the length of the sun rays needs to be a little bit shorter. So I'm just bringing that back. The overall look, you can move that up and down to get the look that you want. And the penetration level can be raised. So you can see you can put a really bright sun in there, or you can back that off. So I'm just going to move the sun up a little bit, so it's just coming through there, and I'm just going to bring that down. And then you've got sun radius. You can make the sun bigger or smaller. You know, that I think is a nice option, this sun radius, and the amount of glow from the sun can be made greater or smaller. And here we go, you've got the amount and the radius, so I can find a happy land there, and I'm just going to make it a little bit warmer because the sky is so red. I'm just going to make that sun there quite warm, and I'm going to color the sun rays a little bit warmer as well. Now the randomize button at the bottom moves the sun rays around, so as you move across you will get different sun rays that come through. That one was quite good. I can get back to that one. Too much. Just finding the right level. We can increase or decrease the brightness. We can also increase or decrease the number. So if I go up to the number of sun rays, it's on 50, I can make it more or I can make it less. So I'm just going to keep going along the randomizer until I find something that I think is quite natural. Now I've got the sun rays set to quite high at the moment so I can see them clearly. So I just want to move that. There we go. So I'm happy with that one. I'm just going to back those sun ray lengths off slightly. And we can just find an area that works. So just back off the amount. Yeah, it's coming across there. I don't like that. So I'm just going to move the randomize button until I find something a little bit better. Okay, happy with that. So let's just look at the glow. A little bit of glow in there. Yeah. Still not too happy here with it coming across. So we can remove that by using the edit mask, and we can use a brush or a radial mask to deal with this. So if I bring in a radial mask here, then I can place it towards the edge here and take out this edge here so that we're not getting them there. I can move it over a little bit further. You can see, so you just get an ever so slight one. So all this is doing is saying don't do it in this area here. So you can make this bigger or smaller. You know, you can make a little narrow one, rotate it round just the same, and you can bring that in along the edge of Big Ben there, and you can see you can control the amount of glare that you get coming across. So I'm happy with that. I'm just going to go down to mystical. Mystical can give us quite a nice effect. I'll overdo it, I'll bring it up a lot, but you end up with this sort of really, well, mystical look at the end of the day. So we're just going to back that off here, open up the shadows just a little bit more. It just gives us that sort of, yeah, really great look. So happy with that. Now I'm going to accept that. I'm not going to do very much more with this. They do have some really good functions in the AI sky replacement, and they also have an AI augmented sky slider. You can add things as well to it. So if you go back into the main functions, you can also AI enhance the whole image. So I can bring the accents up. Look, you can create more or less from that, and you can enhance the sky separately from that function. So there's some really nice functions in there. Don't want to overdo it. The color's getting a bit much. We'll back that off. So I'm just going to apply that. It's going to send it back into Lightroom, and then we will do the final edit. So we now have an enhanced noise reducted HDR, and it's been edited twice, Photoshop and in Luminar. So right, let's just sort the final color and balance out here. So we're just going to back the saturation off just a little bit, but bring up the vibrance, because vibrance is color contrast. It gives you quite a nice finish overall. And then just going to bring down the highlights just a little bit. I'm going to open up the shadows just a little bit. I think we've got enough contrast. I don't think we need any more contrast, and I don't think we need any more clarity. In fact, we might even go with a little bit of negative clarity just to make the image work a little bit better. There we go, a little bit of texture. And then just to finish off, I'm going to go down to effects. I'm going to put in a post crop vignette about -30. I'm going to bring the feather slider up to 100%. There we go. And wow, colors are incredible, aren't they? I'm just going to back that saturation off just a little bit more, because otherwise it's a little bit unbelievable. So yeah, so happy with that. We just need to put the reflection in for the sun. So I'm going to go into masks, I'm going to go to radial gradient. I'm going to bring in quite a long, with no feather, quite a long, bright line in there. In fact, I'm going to bring it up the top there, and we're just going to draw it down. Just going to bring that up, brighten that up. And there, that works quite well. I don't need it at the top, so I'm going to subtract a brush, which will have 100% flow and quite a lot of feather. And I'm just going to take that bit out at the top there. And then we're going to right click and duplicate the mask. And we're going to make this smaller. And this is going to be the sun reflection in the water there. So this is going to be even brighter. Like that. Just add in a little bit of color. And you can see we're getting that reflection from the sun coming through there. But because we did the brush with the last mask, it's not going to go up onto the top area there. Okay, I think, yep, I think we're done. So maybe this needs to be, I say that, but then maybe this needs to be a little bit brighter. Just take another radial gradient here. I'm just going to pop one in here and just brighten that up ever so slightly with some contrast. There we go. Okay, yeah, we are done. I'm happy with that. We're going to stick with that image. It's a rather bold image, lots of color. It will do well on social media because people love very colorful images, you know, but it's a bit of fun. Showed you some of the techniques there. And if you like what I've done here, then you know, it'd be great for you to join me on YouTube, subscribe and stay with me. If you enjoyed this video, then please click like. And if you do have any comments or any questions, feel free to drop them in, and I'll be more than happy to respond to you. So for now, I will say bye bye.